And so she had begun that process and we supported her in that. So it's very exciting. On the downside, one of the things that we had previously looked into, the CTE grant, and that's not the workforce development grant, but what many people know of as the CTE grant, we determined was not realistic for this year because, you know, with being out of school and all the other things we're juggling, to try to bring new programs in that would align with this would be a little much. So we'll be saving that and hopefully re-entertaining that in the next school year. We had some other discussion regarding support for faculty and staff for absences. Sorry, I'm having a loss for words. For absences related to COVID-19, be it for required testing or quarantine time because of, you know, awaiting test results or things like that. And it looks like we got a draft of that to look at tonight. So you'll see more of that. We just started the conversations. Also, I think that was our big thing. Susan, am I missing anything? I feel like there's something else that I'm missing, but those were the big things.
I think, well, then we did go over where we're estimating we are as far as spending the special funding for COVID and talked about some potential uses for that money. We have funding we need to finish spending by December. So Jim is encouraging us to get on it and get it spent. So I don't think we're going to have any trouble with that.
Thank you, Susan. Yes, so we did have some discussion about that, and things are going well financially. I mean, money will be tight, but all is so far so good, and the outlook looks pretty good too. So that's all from finance.
Great, thank you. And what was the grant for? Is it for anything in particular, or is it just, hey, we like Waldorf schools, here's some money?
I will tell you about that during my meeting.
Cool.
My portion of my
during your part. Great, thank you so much.
Say in my report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chelsea and Susan. This, as always, this is huge work. Okay, thank you. And that would encompass, so policy review. Item 3.2, COVID-19 personnel policy. And that's a report from Susan.
Yeah, so this is a good segue from the Finance Committee to this policy. It was brought up in the Finance Committee, as Chelsea just reported, concerns as far as teachers and staff needing to have time off for testing and potentially quarantining for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, depending on what's going on. So in the discussion, the solution was brought forward that we can write a policy and ask the board to approve a policy so that staff will feel confident that they will not be penalized for having to go take a test or be off campus for any period of time. So thank you. So this is the first read of this policy. Of course, it takes 2 reads, but this has been reviewed by, Maggie helped me write it, pulling in some of the legal language, and Nick has also reviewed it. Nick has asked, and the committee also asked, that we look at whether or not we can also not charge staff and faculty for sick time if they get COVID-19. I have not been able to clarify how that affects a potential leave yet. So that information is not in there, but we will have it cleared up by your second read. So primarily this addresses if a faculty staff classified member needs to go take a test, that we will not charge them for the time they have to go take the test. If they have to wait for the results, we will not charge it against their, they will be paid regular wages for that. Or if they are required to quarantine due to COVID-19 for a couple of weeks, we will also do that. We have had that policy allowing, informally, allowing staff to work from home in the cases where they are feeling well, but have a potential exposure. So this is really just solidifying and putting in concrete the policy that we are actually already doing.
So for the most part, this is how things have been being handled. This just kind of writes it down. So there's an official document.
Right.
Okay. Does anybody have questions about the quarantine personnel policy that's before us?
I do. This is Chelsea. I just wanted to check in and just clarify what you were saying, because you're in the second bullet. It states regular use of sick time will resume upon report of verified COVID-19 results. Is that because we're not sure if that's going to impact their ability to get the extended pay through Families First, or is that?
Yes, that is. So
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so then if they don't have to be to qualify for the FFCRA, then we'll change that.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That's what I thought that you were saying. I just wanted to make sure, because I was reading and listening, and I don't multitask well.
That's okay. And it's good to ask questions. And when I read that same bullet, it says regular use of sick time will resume upon report of verified COVID-19 results. The way I interpret that is that they would have to use their sick time if they did in fact get COVID-19. So Monica,
that's what I was just asking for clarification on. And so that's what Susan was saying, because we discussed this at finance, that we wanted to ensure that teachers were supported if they have to go out. If you'll see in the third bullet, the Families First Coronavirus Response ACE sick leave program, you can apply for and get paid through that program. But we wanted to make sure that we didn't put in a policy that disqualified our staff from utilizing that. So that's what we'll get follow up on and here at the next meeting, if I'm right, Susan, is that?
That's right. And also in your reading it, I feel like I need to do a little work on clarifying it, because just being positive does not mean you can't work from home. So because many people have a positive reading but feel generally fine. So I want to be clear with that, that we do have that option of working from home now, and would want to continue to be able to utilize that in appropriate cases. So I'll need to think a little bit about the wording of that line.
great, thank you. And thank you, Chelsea, for clarifying that. That's why it's nice to have multiple people to help explain things. Any other questions? Yeah, and this is the first read. So any other questions or comments going on? I see Chelsea, you got your hand up for something else.
Me again. I did also just want to say thank you to Susan. This was a really quick turnaround, because we did just discuss this at our finance committee meeting. So I really do appreciate, Susan, you and your team getting this together so quickly so we could start the process. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and thank you, Maggie, too. Okay, any other questions about this or comments before we move on? And this is the first read, so we will be seeing this document again at another meeting. Okay, great. Hearing none, seeing none. I'm going to move on to item 3.1, reentry plan. 3.3.1, hybrid implementation date. Or that's part of that, sorry. So let's talk about the reentry plan. And Susan, is this something you have a report or comment about it? I saw that we got the reentry plan with all the amended comments and everything on it.
Right. So after our last meeting, you asked for board members who had questions to forward them to us, and we went through those questions and whatever comments were made in the board meeting last time. We then made the adjustments that seemed appropriate in the plan. I see that there is at least one place where we have a sentence in the same paragraph twice, so we'll fix that. So what I had sent out to you is this one that's up, which shows what we took out and what we added. What we took out has strike throughs, and what we added is in blue. And then the other one is the actual full-on plan, the way it will be, assuming you improve it. So the second one has all of the strikeouts and extra language out of it.
And so charter council members got this. I'm not sure if members of the public had an opportunity to view this, or if just kind of charter council members are going over this right now. If we need to spend a minute kind of reviewing like the things that, I'm assuming that most charter council members have had an opportunity to review this. Are there any questions or comments to start the conversation off from charter council members? I'm not really hearing anything, so.
I have a comment.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, Heather. I did have one concern in the document. It doesn't specify anything about cohort size. So there was a little bit of a concern for me that the reference to cohorts as possibly being made up of an entire class could be taken to imply that cohorts could be as big as 28 students. That was one thing that kind of popped out to me as being a potential problem.
Well, the other side of that, the additional requirement is that we are social distanced appropriately, so it wouldn't be possible to get 28 students in a classroom and have them 6 feet apart. Okay. So we're looking at a maximum number realistically of 16. And as the numbers are coming in, they will probably be smaller than that.
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
This is Katya. My question is, if a class size that is going to return, if it's 16 students or less, if the remaining members of the class choose to do the continue with the distance learning from home, does that mean that, let's say there's 14 for a class, can they in fact come 4 days a week versus the 2 days a week?
That's a discussion that I'll need to have with faculty as far as how that balances with their workload. Would it be appropriate to give more time for distance learning? What's the overall impact on the school as far as students on site? So that certainly is a possibility as far as our discussions are going right now, but I'm not going to commit to that until we have the opportunity to work through the numbers with the teachers.
Okay, and may I ask one more question? I know that Chico Unified is they have 3 different options: either continue with the distance learning from home, or do the hybrid where there's the AB schedule and they're going 5 days a week for 3 hours for the A group and 3 hours for the PM group. And then the third option is that the teachers are just live taping their classes via Zoom and kids can watch from home. Might that be an option for our school? So the kids can come back maybe more than just 2 days a week for half a day?
So part of oh, you mean so kids can be on campus more often?
Yeah.
Some would
Yeah.
not. I'm not hearing that desire from the community. I'm hearing more they want either to be distance learning, which could include videos, and that they do not want, those who are wanting distance learning do not want all video instruction. So again, the options are things that the teachers need to look at what is realistic and viable for us, and not, and so I'm not going to commit to any changes in what I have currently, what we have currently proposed by the committee.
Okay, because it's very different for my first grader, who is generally only about 30 to 40 minutes per day live interaction versus everything else is pretty much recorded, versus the sixth grader who has a lot more, in-person live connectivity. So
yeah, and that's that's part of the discussion too with faculty, is the difference between first grade and eighth grade and all and kindergarten and all of the classes in between, that what kids can do and what's going to be realistic for the teachers is going to be different. So having that discussion is part of our plan for this week.
okay, and we'll hear about that via email, the parents, or how do we get informed with what you guys talk about?
I will continue to post on Parent Square.
Okay, thank you.
So once again, this is the policy we were reviewing at the last meeting. That is just a plan. So this is different, Susan, from the hybrid implementation date, and then how teachers will actually use this document. And that's part of why we had it the way it is, so that then the teachers can craft what's going to happen grade by grade and so on and so forth.
Correct. So this is actually the safety plan, which are the procedures and expectations as to how to deal with COVID-19 and the additional work that we need to do to keep the cohorts small and safe, and the building clean. So that's really what this particular item is whether or not the safety plan is ready to go.
Great. And Charter Council members who submitted edits, are you feeling that your edits were heard and implemented correctly and meaningfully?
I do feel like there are still some statements in the document that maybe sort of minimize the dangers of COVID that I saw still in there from the last document, but we have the document we have in front of us. So I don't know if that further discussion is going to mitigate that much.
And
that's Heather.
Thanks, Heather. And then that being said, Vicky and who were the other person who was on was it?
Yeah, Vicky and Chelsea and I met on Friday and reviewed the document with all of the responses and everything, and put this one together.
So Heather, to address your concerns, do you want to point those out, or you want to hash those out, or like how are you feeling about that? Because this is like a safety plan. How are you feeling about it? Yeah.
If I can address that, Monica, any statement in there has scientific backing, is not intended or expected to diminish, but also will not exaggerate the concern.
So it's more like an overall school safety plan, more than us saying we really think it's serious or anything, or because of course we do.
Yeah,
right.
Of course we do, and there's lots of things as we went through it, that we talked about that really speak to the fact of the danger of this potential issue,
right,
and all of the things that we are doing to significantly address those air filters so that the air is turned over, hand sanitizer, schedules, cohort separation, all of the things that are expected by the CDC, we are doing.
Thank you. Laurel?
I don't think I'm on mute, but I wanted to make the comment, you know, speaking of my own experience here, but when a document like this is written, and particularly when it's to address something very, very serious and something that's changing, there are going to be things in it that may not be written, and it's a good faith effort to cover all the bases, knowing that going forward, things may change and things may need to be adjusted. They may be added to the policy, or parts of the policy may need to be set aside because it turns out they don't work. So I just like to note that we could spend a lot of time on the document. It's not that I don't think it's important. It's absolutely, absolutely vital and critical. But I think that we could parse it to death and still have questions based on information that may come up tomorrow. So for my part, I'd like to accept the document, knowing that going forward, the administrator, we used to say, this is why we pay the administrator the big bucks. Sorry, Susan, but it's really her job. And if that isn't working, then it's her job to bring that to our attention immediately and make those in the moment adjustments to keep everybody safe and address contingencies that she may not even know about right now. Thank you.
Sure. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is a fluid situation. I mean, that's one thing that we've been saying all along. It is a fluid situation. Any other comments or questions from Charter Council members before I open up to the public?
I had one just real fast, and oh, hold on, Laurel, you're on mute.
Yeah, we'll come back to you, Laurel, in just a second. Let's go, Chelsea, go first, and then go ahead.
Okay,
thank you.
And I just wanted to clarify, because I heard Laurel made a motion, and I was not a motion.
No, she was just saying she's ready to make a motion.
Okay, I gotcha. I just, before we do that, I just wanted to clarify with Susan that this is strictly for the safety plan and the opening date on-site hybrid option document that we received will be discussed in the next item, correct?
That's correct, Chelsea.
I just want to make sure it's not all one swoop and we're missing a discussion, because I have thoughts on that, but okay, I'm ready.
Cool. Any members of the public want to comment? Oh, sorry, Laurel. Laurel first. Now you're muted.
I just wanted to make the point. I just, sometimes when I think about these, developing either a simile or analogy is helpful to me. And it's kind of like we're in the middle of a fire, like many, many people have been. This happens to be the virus, but the reaction time needs to be very quick. And no matter what we're told, it may change immediately based on the situation. And that's how I'm thinking of it. We're, very much like what the fire personnel are trying to do. They can't always predict the next thing. So no plan could cover everything and be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members of the public want to make comments to the council before we vote on this? This is just about the safety plan. Okay, hearing none. Do I hear a motion to accept this plan? Laura, why don't you unmute and make your motion?
I move to accept the plan.
Okay. First, do I have a Chelsea?
Chelsea, second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay.
I'll just add one last quick comment. One of the things that we discussed in our small working group was specifically not making it too specific. Like Laurel said, because if new information comes out on what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing, we wanted to be able to support that same, same thing if we change categories or that. We wanted to make sure that this document was relevant through the different phases and changes and things that come up with reopening. And so with the expectation that this would just be the overarching and more everyday things would be put into place at the site level.
Thank you. And one thing I just want to say that to dovetail on what Chelsea said is that's one thing I really love about Waldorf education is that it's ambiguous enough that the teachers can craft what they need for their grade level, just like how they can find a pedagogical story that goes with whatever's happening in the culture of their classroom. I like that it's vague enough that they can craft what they need to for their grade levels and for their individual situations. So thank you. All right, are we ready to have a vote? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call on council members to weigh in. Laura?
Laura Swanson, aye.
Thank you. Trisha?
Trisha out there to aye.
Chelsea?
Chelsea Parker, aye.
Heather?
Heather Bonilla, abstain, please.
Okay. Laurel?
Laurel Hill Ward, aye.
Okay. Vicky?
Vicky Woncott, aye.
Thank you. And Monica McDaniel will say aye. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item. Now we're talking about hybrid implementation date. So this is where the next part of all of this. Do we have a report or anything? Like how is this going to start, Susan or Chelsea? Or
So
That's definitely Susan, not me. Susan,
Yeah.
not me.
okay, sounds good.
yeah. So as we discussed back in June, we agreed that the first 9 weeks of school would be fully distance, and then looking to have students return at some level in October with a focus on students at risk. The discussion of what at risk means has broadened quite a bit. And also in asking information from once we opened, asking information from the community about what they would like to do, we found that more than 50% of the families with students here at Blue Oak wished to return to some level of on-site. There's definitely a difference in how much they would like, most wanting more than we can currently offer, but wanting to balance the needs of all students in an equitable basis. I'm presenting this as an opportunity to address the needs of those who do not feel served by the distance learning program that we have. So this week, starting last week and this week, I met with faculty, a team of 5 classroom teachers and 1 office staff person to look at what potentials would be. And this is based primarily on those discussions. So the proposal would be that we have an option for an on-site program to augment the distance learning and begin that November 9th. We chose November 9th in order to not be opening during the week of the election and also to be able to balance the 2 different cohorts that we're currently looking at. So we are offering through the 2 cohorts, made the decision of one being Monday and Thursday, the second Tuesday and Friday. And that it would be through the morning. 2 reasons for that: it allows us to sanitize in the afternoons and allows for the afternoons to be focused on synchronous instruction for math and other subjects that are needed. We would not have a cohort more than 16 students, or a sub-cohort, using that clarification. The cohort term applies to the group as a whole. The sub-cohort is if we needed to cut a class down because it's too large for the room, it would be 16. And that's in order to be slightly larger than what is considered a small group. So there was some reasoning in that and still being able to fit in the room. Our Wednesdays will thereby allow us to focus fully on distance learning during that day, and then which is also serving the hybrid program for those students that are off-site as well at that time. And then there are collaborative meetings, professional development, and when possible, additional prep time. The on-site option, as I said, would end during the noon hour. I don't have the specific minutes yet, so I'm not, so I didn't put that in the proposals, but we're looking at 8:15 to 12:15, that sort of a time frame. If you tell me I said that, I'm not, that's not in the proposal, but it's about that. And then the other information is the work we're currently doing, meeting with grade level works to focus on how that would implement. As I spoke earlier, it's going to be different for first and second grade than 7th and 8th grade, different for kindergarten as well. So, you know, those things. And then just as of Monday night, we had about 78% of the surveys have been received. We have received probably closer to 85 or 86% now. We are continuing to see about the same numbers, 56%, 44%, 55%, 45%, as far as those wishing on-site programs to continue versus distance learning programs. So my proposal is that we begin this on-site program the week of November, beginning November 9th. That's it.
So I have a couple questions, maybe a comment. One comment I want to make is if we've got about 78% and it's 50-50, the trouble is we're not going to make everybody happy. And so my goal, my wish would be to come up with some middle of the road compromise that makes everybody enough happy, because I don't want anybody to feel like they have to leave the school because of decisions that we make right now. So I want that to be said. But one of the questions that I have is students are doing distance learning now, correct? They're doing like Zoom classes, like school happened today. So what happened today at Blue Oak? Were all the students Zoomed?
Yes.
So everyone's doing distance learning currently. Okay.
Everyone
So one thing I don't, yeah?
Yes, everybody is currently doing distance learning.
Okay. So one question I have is, the thing that kills me about the cohorts for our pedagogical approach is that everyone should be together kind of thing. Like in other schools, they separate everybody out. Is it possible for maybe the kids who are in the cohort that are present to maybe get those Zoom people in so that there's like this togetherness? Or is that just, I mean, I don't know. And I'm wondering if the teachers are helping to craft this. Like if I had a class and if I had 21 students in my class, and so all 16 couldn't, or all 21 couldn't be there together, I would want our little family to somehow still be together. So is that a possibility? Has that been discussed, or have teachers come up with creative solutions for something like that? Or maybe it's just me going, that's my problem. I don't know. I'm just curious.
It's definitely been discussed and it's a concern. One of the things with having the afternoons together, the full class can be together in those Zoom meetings, also any that might happen on Wednesday. So there's that piece, but then there's the discussion of really what is feasible for a teacher to do, to film without, or to have students on Zoom while they're there. All of those things are really things I want the faculty to be able to talk through, to figure out what it is they can do. And I think we all understand the Waldorf fabric of a class and not wishing to disrupt that fabric. This may not be a time when we can fully implement that. There's a number of different reasons, staffing wise, that may be not able to do. I am trying to look at the positive of that and say then possibly the students will get familiar with other teachers or different ways of doing things and grow in a different way, even though even though it's not traditionally Waldorf, maybe it'll become more Waldorfy, who knows? So as we learn from this process.
This is
Yeah.
Katya again, I'm sorry. Can I?
No, I'm sorry. I'm not sure who that. Are you a member of the public or a teacher?
Public.
Okay, can I call on you next? Because there's a charter council member who wants to comment first, and there'll be a spot for you to chime in, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Laurel?
I just wanted to ask, and maybe it's already happened, but I know in my situation teaching, I've had to kind of facilitate and get permissions for my grandchildren to talk to other kids. So could you set up a Zoom hangout? This supervised, of course, but just informal time for kids to interact for a whole class. Just a thought, it would involve permissions and that sort of thing. But if the school could facilitate parents giving permission and also create that hangout for them in some type of a alternate format. Thank you.
We actually already have that. We have what's called friendship clubs, which are basically Zoom meetings that are pretty much, we're calling it Zoom recess, amongst the staff that are involved in it. So just a time for students to be online just to chat, and it's overseen by Amber Bass, who's our behavior intervention staff member. So she's just keeping the conversation positive. And so we have, I think the 5th and 6th grade, 3rd and 4th are doing quite a bit of that. And so they are having time. Just sometimes they just get on and say, I'm just bored being home all the time. And someone else says, yeah, I'm bored too. And that just is helping them just continue to socialize and keep their friendships alive.
Okay, and then Fiora, I have you on as Fiora, the person who was talking before. Is that you?
Sorry.
First, if you're hearing comments from the Charter Council first, Laura Swanson and Heather Bonea both have their hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We'll get back to you. I don't know your name. So Laura?
Hey, yeah, I was just curious if we know yet who will be running the cohorts. Will it be the teachers?
Yeah, the cohorts would be primarily the classroom teachers.
Okay. I'm concerned about that because I thought that we had decided in June that we would not be asking teachers to teach both in person and remotely until January. And I'm curious what input you've received from teachers about asking them to come back and teach before that January date we discussed.
So I do not have the same understanding, Laura, as far as my direction from the board that we were not going to do that. I believe that it was discussed that they didn't want to do it, but I was not directed not to have that happen. I understand the concern. I also think that, if I'm looking at a class with 5 kids in it, potentially saying that teacher can't also do online feels like not quite a balance. And again, for the needs, my concern here is the needs of the families as well as the teachers. So the teachers have not discussed how it might be done with me.
Monica, you're on mute.
I said, I'm sorry, who was the other Charter Council member who had their hand up?
Heather did, and then I'd like to go after her.
Okay, Heather?
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to piggyback on what Laura said. I do recall having a pretty lengthy conversation about specifically wanting to commit to the distance learning model through the end of the first semester to allow families and teachers to get into the rhythm in the interest of having the most success for completing educational goals. And when we discussed opening up campus to families and students, it was to allow students that needed additional supports for completing their distance learning work. And so it would be more like a distance learning cohort where students were invited on campus, and there would be staff available to help them facilitate completing their work and have a place to socialize and that sort of thing. That was my understanding as well of the conversation that we had as a board around adopting the learning model that we did. And so my question then, I guess, is asking, is this proposal requesting a change in that instructional model before the date that we had originally talked about, which was at the end of the first semester? And then and also, are we, it sounds like we are asking teachers then to teach 2 different curriculums. And so my concern is that that sounds a little bit messy and maybe not like we have enough time to implement that well. So I guess my real question would be, how many faculty members do we have on board that have expressed an interest in leading cohorts on campus?
So I think what I need to do first, Heather, to respond to you is to state that I feel I have my direction from the board to establish a plan for children to be back on campus by the middle of October. So we're now beyond the date when you directed me to have students on campus. So if I have misunderstood the direction as you seem to, because I don't see this as changing that, I see myself as fulfilling the responsibility that I was given. So I would need different direction from the board to clarify that if in fact this is a change. So that's really a board decision rather than my input to you on that. So we would ask the board to give me direction there. As far, I don't think we're talking about teaching 2 different curriculums, so I'm rather surprised at that comment. This is 2 different modalities to teach the same curriculum, and definitely blends together. And then also keeps, as Monica presented earlier, the Waldorf commitment to the classroom structure. As far as have I asked staff who's willing to, I think the reality is that that's a management discussion rather than a board discussion.
Chelsea?
Yeah, and I was gonna just piggyback on that. Heather, my understanding of our discussion previously was that we had committed to distance learning only through that first date. And forgive me, I forget that I think it was early October.
Can all people please mute their screens? Thank you.
That we would commit to distance learning only during that time. And then we discussed opening the campus to the students who needed it, not specifically students who needed additional supports. And I would be very concerned and cautious on how we determine who needs to be back on campus. Because when you start talking about the emotional well-being of students, you know, and the physical well-being of some students and the economic well-being of some students, the need isn't always just educational supports. I think some of the need is for the campus to be open for the students who need it to come back. And as we saw in the survey results, about half of our families feel that their student needs to be back on campus, at least in some capacity. You know, and I think it's extremely important for the safety and well-being, both mental, physical, you know, all of those things, for our campus to be open in some capacity. That was my understanding of our previous discussion, and our vote also was that we and I believe it was even in the motion that we look to reopen the campus if we were able in October to the students who needed it. And that, you know, discussion at that time would be about how that would look. I know we had thrown around some ideas. But I have, so my question, because I'm seeing the proposal, I guess I was a little bit surprised on the proposal on the sub cohorts following an A-B schedule, the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday. So essentially the students that would be returning to campus would be roughly half day, 2 days a week. And then a different set of students would be there half day, 2 days a week. And then a third set of students would be online, working from home only, distance learning. But if only half of our students want to come back on campus, why would we not have all 50% of them on campus? Because it looked like from our surveys that was kind of a desired, like a Monday through Friday half day seemed to be the most desired option from the parents who wanted their children back on campus. And I mean, I can see needing to have an A and B schedule if we were reopening at 100% of our students. But I'm just, I guess some of my concerns are, like, as a parent, if I send my kid to school on Monday for half a day, but then they're home on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'm trying to support them there, but then they're back to school on Thursday, that gets really tricky.
So,
and seems really disruptive for the student as well, to be back and forth so much every day, be different.
yeah, so we discussed having like a Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday as being possibly easier for families and also for cleaning. But in discussing that from an educational model, that then great space of not being together for 5 days sort of ends up every day is the beginning of the coming back after vacation. So that's the reason for spacing it. The other, and so another possibility is to, and let me explain what I'm going to say, is to possibly take out this particular schedule, because this is the schedule that we were proposing prior to knowing exactly what students in what class were necessary. You know, so therefore we went with 2 cohorts in order to make sure that everyone who wanted it had the opportunity to have an on-site instructional model. As we get the numbers solidified with the families, which I'm asking, I'll put a parent square out after you approve this, assuming that you do. I'll put a parent square out tonight asking all parents to give me a final decision by Thursday morning so that we can have clarity, anybody that's changed their mind because of the schedule that we're offering. And then we can solidify that and move forward with actually class numbers, which are our limiting factor. So in other words, to maybe make a long story short, it's possible that students would be on campus more than this. This is what I feel like I can propose that's concrete right now.
And then Heather, I see you've got another question. I just want to make a comment to take my turn, and then we'll go back to Heather. And I wanted to let the members of the public that are present know that I know to call on Kaja when the Charter Council's done weighing in, but if you could please use your raise hand function, especially if you don't have your camera on, so we could see that you're interested in making a comment, that would be great. So go ahead and locate that now. The comment I wanted to make before I give Heather a turn again is, more information came out from Butte County today, and we've actually moved from the red tier to the orange tier. So I think that's a relevant part of this conversation too. If we were still in the purple tier or even the red tier, that might weigh the conversation a little bit differently. But I think we should at least consider the fact that the letter that's on the screen now about the orange tier being open too. So, and I agree with Chelsea that like when she pointed it out, the schedule seemed okay, but when she pointed out the logistics of that seemed a little bit chaotic too. So maybe removal of that, and again, maybe letting grade levels choose their cohorts or however they're going to do that. Heather.
I believe Vicky and Trisha were before me, and then I'll go.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry.
That's
so
okay.
like I said, I'm not seeing the hands going
yeah,
up. So
it came up in the chat.
Okay. Okay. Vicky. You're on mute, dear. You're on mute. You're still on mute. We can't hear you. You're going to take it off of mute? There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I just wanted to say that we had, the way I remember it, we agreed to come back on October 13th and see if we could get some kids on campus. At that time, in my vision, it would have been kids with special needs. But now I think that those needs have changed, and they're all special needs, and it's necessary. The needs are the needs have changed. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Trisha?
Yeah, thank you. So my what Chelsea and Vicky said, that's what I recall as well, kind of reevaluating for kids with the special needs or the needing to come back mid-October. So my question is I know we talked a little bit last time about kind of asking the teachers, and one of my questions and concerns would be the kids that are continuing to do distance learning, which is going to be half of the group. Those, if the teachers are spending 4 days with the other kids, usually like they have morning Zoom calls right now, like they're not going to be able to do that with the distance learning kids. So are the distance learning kids going to get less attention from those teachers with the recordings? Because I know that maybe the recording's 9 minutes, but I don't think it takes them 9 minutes to do it. I think it's pretty lengthy process from talking to my kids as teachers. And are those kids that are doing distance learning is going to suffer somewhat because the kids that are on campus, obviously they're there and they need to be spending that full time with them.
Yeah.
And then my other point would be, I think there's a lot of parents that I'm talking to kind of are waiting to see with schools opening how that goes and if cases are increasing. And so they may say, okay, in a month, okay, it looks like we're holding and it's not getting worse. Now we want to come back on campus. Is that, and I know that's probably going to depend on class size for that cohort would be my guess, but so those are kind of my questions and comments.
Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, can we let Chico Unified be the guinea pig? Sorry. Thank you. I don't see oh yes, Heather's got her hand up. Yes.
Monica, did you want me to address Trisha's questions or?
Sure, before we get too far away from it, and then we'll let Heather go. And I see that Ty and Kaja have their hand up after that.
Yeah. So will distance learning suffer is a question I hear a lot because, you know, we've done a really good job of making sure we're interfacing with students on a regular basis and keeping those connections working. So I again will say it will change. We have set aside the afternoons so that there is time daily for teachers to interface with the distance students. And again, there are things that we're talking about, like, are there cameras that'll work? I've had a couple of recommendations of cameras that will be easier for teachers to be able to record themselves. Is that what we want to do? But I really feel like this is a faculty discussion to figure out how we can do this. The blessing to me is we've had 9 weeks with totally focused on distance learning and to be able to learn how that works. Last spring, we had no idea and we just jumped at the deep end. And So our distance learning has been, for those who it's working for, has been successful. So building on that and then bringing in the on-site program, yes, the distance will change. How much it will change and whether or not it will still be effective is something that we need to work on as a staff. And I've answered that, Tricia. Now I've forgotten your second question or concern. Oh, about students being able to come back if they decide in a month or two that they want to. It will depend on the cohort size. So if there's a class that has room in it underneath what we feel is an appropriate number, then the student would be able to move in with a procedure. It wouldn't be immediately, and much like we do with our registration process is what I'm picturing. But we're really, once we establish the size of the cohorts and the number of classes, we'll stick to that. So I'm not going to say, oh, maybe we'll open a second cohort in a class. We're not going to do that. If we have one cohort in a class, we'll stay with that one cohort and we'll have to prepare a waiting list. And that's just to, again, to continue to preserve the community and the safety of that group of children.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're on to Heather. And I'm still going to cycle through the charter council members because there's new hands up. So Heather, you're next.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I agree 100% about the incredible need we have right now to get students, many students that need to be on campus. So I agree with that 100% and am glad that we're talking about that now. And I like the discussion about involving faculty and staff in planning for students to come back on campus, because I think we have a lot of very bright, intelligent, creative people that work at our school. And I really like the idea of tapping into that resource to come up with some really good ideas on how we can accommodate that safely and reasonably. My question about the plan for some students coming on campus and some not is, especially if those students are coming on campus only a couple of days a week, it would seem to me that they would need to be both doing the on-campus as well as distance learning, because I don't see how they could cover all of the curriculum that would be required in just a couple of mornings a week. So I think that's something that we would need to be aware of with that model. We're asking families now to do both and students to adjust between both programs. And then yes, I do also have the concern for those children for whom distance learning is working. Now their model is going to completely change. So it is a possibility that may not work. If, for example, students are waiting around at home till the afternoon to get their distance learning work, that could definitely affect the efficacy, use the word twice, of the distance learning program itself if it is rearranged so much in that way.
Thanks, Heather. And I want to dovetail on Heather's comment before I call the next charter council member. What occurs to me, and it's been bubbling up while people have been talking, is the modalities that you're talking about. I'm just wondering, and again, I agree it's got to be up to the teachers because they're the ones, it's their circus, it's their monkeys, right? But I feel like one of the best things about a class is the richness of when you present content and then the discussion that ensues. And so if you're having multiple classes of the same curriculum, being at different modalities, is there something that gets lost? You know, is there something that gets lost in the conversation? So that would just be my comment. You know, it would be great if everyone could do together, whether they're in person or not. And I realize that that creates some challenges, but that's just my thought. So anyway, I'm going to move on to Laura.
Hi, thanks, Monica. I just have a question about the start date in November, which I also want to add on to what Heather said, and I do really appreciate that we're talking about the students who need to be on campus. I think that's so important to talk about. I have a concern about starting in November, so kind of late to the end of the year and close to holidays when students are going to likely be visiting extended family and going out of town. And I'm worried that that is going to set us back and negatively impact our ability to successfully start in January. And I'm just curious, because I'm sure that's been talked about, Susan, and I'm just curious what has been discussed in that regard and if other people have the same concern.
Sure, it's a concern that's come up as far as when to start. One of the proposals to the team was that we start after Thanksgiving, for example, in order to get us through. My sense, though, is there's no, if we do that sort of second guessing, there's no good time to start. And starting, even though this is a time frame that generally is difficult for learning as we go into the holidays, it's also being able to build that rhythm. The second thing is the governor has put out additional expectations as to what social gatherings are, no more than 3 families together at a time. And so we can expect families to comply with that or to continue with distance learning if they're not able to comply. So they go to Thanksgiving dinner and there's a whole ton of people there, then to be honest with us and let us know that, and then go on distance learning for the following 2 weeks so that they are not coming back into the class. So those are the kinds of things are not, for example, written in the safety plan, because that happened since we wrote the safety plan, but they are protections that we can ask families to do in order to honor the safety of those who are on campus now.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan. Chelsea.
Yeah, so I just had a couple of things that that came to my mind, and so I have one student, my high school student, went back to school yesterday, so we're kind of seeing what that looks like from that standpoint. And I also have friends that teach at some of the other schools and work in other capacities. So it seems to me like things are going pretty well from, obviously we're only 2 days in, but, from a smoothness, which is pretty good to hear. One of the things I wanted to bring up, because Heather, I think a couple of people have touched on the, how a teacher is going to teach their distance learning versus their in-class students. And one of the things that Chico Unified's doing that I would support is that the teachers actually get to decide if they want to, do live concurrent, like live, while they're in class with students, also have live Zoom, versus do, part of it recorded and presented later, or, doing live Zooms at other times with their distance learning students. And I think that, for me personally, I would really support that, because I think that the needs or the ability of a first grade teacher to Zoom concurrently with a live class versus an 8th grade teacher who could have, an 8th grade teacher could have a student monitoring the Zoom chat and, help facilitate discussion with those students, versus a first grade class that, that might be more of a distraction and less beneficial to all students involved. So that's one point. I really think that not saying that all of the teachers have to serve both of their sets of students the same way is important. Just like we don't tell them how they have to implement their curriculum on a day-to-day basis. The other thing, in response, I forget even who said it, but for the distance learning and in class and not being able to do all of the work in class at just a few days a week, even the Chico Unified schools that are doing half days, 5 days a week, it is still a hybrid. So some of their courses are taught in person and they still have the other half of their schooling to do at home. So I wouldn't expect us to be different. And it seems to be working. You know, whatever you learn in class, you don't then redo at home. You do the subjects that you didn't do in class. So it seems to be working pretty smoothly. And then the other thing that I just wanted to bring up that I think is extremely important, I know Chico Unified gave their faculty 2 prep days leading into the transition to having students in school. And I think it's really important that we also ensure that teachers, I mean, I know 2 days is not a lot, but hopefully because we are giving them more than a week's notice, that 2 days will be a good amount. I mean, I would very much support our teachers having prep days with no students going into a hybrid model. That's all that I wrote down. So I think that's all I had.
Thanks, Chelsea. The one other benefit of the congruent model modality is that, let's say a student wakes up with a sore throat, you know, that's a thing that that Chico Unified has built in, that the student can Zoom in that day instead of going in, which I kind of like, because then you're not risking it because you might be kind of on the edge. So again, I don't want to tell any teacher how to do their thing, and I really want the teachers to craft their own, but that's just another thing to consider about the live concurrent modality. Ty O'Neill, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I really appreciate the discussion that's going on here, and I just kind of wanted to lend a voice. I mean, up front, I'll say lend a voice in support of allowing those students that can and want to get back on campus to do so. If we have to wait until November 9th, so be it. But short of just being upfront about my bias in that regard, I really appreciate the discussion of making sure that, that we're covering all the bases, and also want to just speak to, my experience in observing the teachers, especially our Waldorf teachers. This is giving them another way to meet their students, wherever they are, right? And that's what they do every day, is trying to figure out, how do I meet students where they need me to be. Most of the families are saying or at least a majority of them are saying that need is going to be better met on campus, and I'm glad that we're heading in that direction. And I trust the teachers to be able to fill in the gaps for each of the kids uniquely, and I think it becomes almost a class discussion because each one of the cohorts, so to speak, are so unique. So I just want to lend my voice both in support of heading back on campus and that I trust the teachers to figure out how to make sure that all the kids are covered where they're at.
Thanks, Ty.
That's it.
And I wanted to, make a comment about the November 9th, and, it's just a comment because it just seems like it might be, it seems like it would be cleaner to have the whole semester distance learning, if that's what's working, and then come back at the end of the semester. Yet I know that people are chomping at the bit. And again, I've seen that in my own family. So I don't know. I don't know what the right choice is. But that's just a comment about the November 9th. But I also heard Susan say that it was after the mid-October. So yeah, Chelsea.
I just, in response to the comment you just made, I think one thing we need to be mindful of is that for 55+ or 55-ish% of our families, distance learning isn't working well enough to prefer that to being in class. And although I think our teachers are doing an amazing job, and honestly, I have opted to keep my student home through the semester. So I'm not even speaking as somebody who's chomping at the bit to get their student back in school, but I'm speaking from somebody who's talked to my son's peers' parents even, and some, you know, and many of them are families who, for all intents and purposes, should be successful distance learning. You know, the children in those particular families don't have obstacles to their learning from a, you know, special education type of standpoint. Their parents are well educated. They have somebody at home full time as a parent. And some of those are struggling just as much or more at being off campus. So I think the reality, and this is, you know, my opinion, but I think that the survey shows that it's not working for everyone. And although on paper we are educating students, so from that standpoint it is working, but it's not for half of our campus. And you know, for me, I really want to say that because of that, because of those reasons, I really feel strongly that we should have the students, because it's half of the population, half days, 5 days a week, or at least 4 days a week, if the one day that's written into this for teachers to be able to have one day focused specifically on supporting, you know, the multimodality. But I don't think 2 days a week, half days is enough. I know Chico Country Day is doing 2 days a week, but my understanding is that they are full days on campus 2 days a week. I just really don't feel like 4 hours, 2 days a week, you know, or 4 hours or less, 2 days a week is enough to do anything but cause more disruption in these kids' lives and their families' lives. I mean, that's a childcare nightmare. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Any other discussion from the Charter Council? Any other discussion? I see Mitchell's got his hand up. Mitchell?
Hello, thank you. Thank you guys for all this discussion. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. You guys already answered a lot of the questions I had coming into the meeting. I just had one more I wanted to find out. Is this the plan, if this is approved, is that going to be then readdressed in January, or is this the plan for the rest of the year? Like, what's the thought going forward? Thank you.
Susan, can you answer his question, please?
I can. Thanks for directing it to me, Monica. So the current plan was established to go through January 22nd. My intent is hopefully to begin discussion about what we'll do in January in the December meeting, so that we're beginning. I have had a few families request that we continue distance learning through the end of the year. And of course, as Chelsea just so eloquently said, many who want more time on campus. So, so I am looking at bringing it up again in December so that we can decide if we want to continue this model again, or, and plus that helps us, gives us time to actually see how this works. And then in January, either continuing it, or if it's the time is right for everybody to be on campus, that direction, whatever is what is right. As it was said earlier, this is a very fluid and very new information every day sort of situation. So.
Thanks, Susan. And there's a request from a Charter Council member to please have the plan back up on the screen. We've had the Butte County letter back on the screen. And so she's requesting we put the plan back on the screen so we can discuss it. And then Kaja, you've been waiting so patiently. Kaja? Am I saying your name
I
correctly?
think, hold on, Monica. Alex, I think she means the opening date for the on-site hybrid option, that plan. The one
I'm
page.
sorry, say that again.
I think that's the one. Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Yeah, that plan. Okay, thanks. Okay, Kasia?
Yes, yes. This is Gerard Valkringi, Katya's husband, and I represent Fiora and Ian. We have two children in school, and I just want to say that I endorse Chelsea and Ty's comments to the nth degree, and I have to say that it's not half the school; it's 57%. The overwhelming majority of our parents represented in Blue Oak are in favor of returning full-time school. And it's an extreme hardship on parents as well as children. And I think that should be at the foremost consideration when starting the program at school. At 25% attendance of in-class teaching is not helpful. It is not helpful at all. And if you keep in mind that you look at the entire school system, private schools are back full-time in classroom. Public schools I have a daughter in public school who now goes half days, but full time. That is beneficial to the students and to the parents. What you have instituted with subgroups is totally unhelpful. And if we're to keep the majority of our students in the Blue Oak School, I think you have to compete with the competition. And not only that, Waldorf is another strong influence on our decisions. And Waldorf hates computers. He endorses in classroom teaching. And so we should take that in great consideration when planning a program. So I just want to say that 4 days is minimum. We should start 4 days in school. And I don't think we can tolerate a 2-day half day. 4-day half day is the minimum. And so much consideration has been going on with a small group, and I appreciate the time spent on this, but keep in mind, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. These thought processes have all been gone through, and we should talk to our public school counterparts, private school counterparts, and realize that what the thinking that's been going on can benefit our small board in making appropriate decisions. And the last thing I want to say that Bob Bernstein, public health officer, is greatly in favor of returning students or Chico students to the classroom setting. And he's a wonderful source of that we can ask what's safe and review our programs. And he's done that for many other schools, and he'll be happy to do it for our school. And I just want to remind the teachers and the board that, and this is my background as a pulmonologist, that 12 and under, ages 12 and under, have the least morbidity. They just don't get sick. Have the least mortality, and have the least comorbidities. And so there's not a whole lot of justification to keep our students at home. And I always tell my teachers that don't be afraid of the students. The most dangerous place in the school is the teacher's lounge. So
you don't even know the half of that.
The students are not going to create problems for the teachers, and the teachers and it can't infect our students very easily. And I know there's been a lot of worry. 47% of our parents are worried. And if you're listening to the news, there's ample reasons to. But if you read the CDC guidelines and the data on children, it's very reassuring. And so that's all I had to say, and I appreciate the platform to share it with you.
Sure thing. Thank you for your comments. And like I said in the beginning, it's the tough call because people are passionate on either end of the spectrum. At the beginning of the last meeting when we had this discussion, we had parents saying they would possibly leave the school if it went back to in-person. So we're just trying to make good choices for everybody. So thank you very, very much for your comments and for being so patient. Thank you. Heather, you have your hand up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the parents who have been sharing their concerns and comments with the board. All of that perspective is incredibly valuable for us in discussing all of these issues. My other, oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I can't hear myself for some reason through my headphones. One of the questions I had was, for those of our teachers that might be at high risk for health complications and may not feel safe returning to an environment with children, would those faculty be faced with decisions that might cause them to lose their position? Or would it be possible to shift maybe some of the distance learning responsibilities to those teachers? Yeah, I think that would be my question.
Susan, can you address Heather's question, please?
I can. I'm muted again for a minute. Yes, that's actually a discussion that has been in place concerning how we can address the needs of staff that have the kind of conditions that might be a concern or of that age. And so that's actually something on a personnel level I've been working on since the beginning of this crisis.
Because we want to make sure everybody's safe. Yeah, it is a two-way street. Yeah. Any teacher will tell you that they get sick every year. Right, teachers? Okay. Carissa, you have your hand up.
Hi, yeah. I just wanted to make a comment and just say, as a parent, I realize the Waldorf teachers are really have a lot of really specialized training, and most of us chose the school because we like that style of education. And I just think that you should give the teachers a lot of input, and maybe even I would like to see maybe letting the teachers each individually decide what works best from them, like returning to campus completely, hybrid, continuing distance education, but maybe on an individual class by class basis, giving the teachers the decision if they choose, if they would like, if they feel strongly one way or the other. And also as a parent, just whether I want my child to return or not depends on in what capacity they're returning. Is it going to be 2 days a week? Is it going to be 5 days a week? Is it going to be half and half? So that kind of affects my decision as a parent on what I actually want to do. Sure. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you. I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your input. Are there any new hands up? Jackie Hammer's got her hand up. Hammer time. You're on.
I hit myself. Okay, so as a parent that is okay with my child going back to school, I already have a high schooler that started this week. She's definitely afraid to be there, and she has the choice to be able to stay home and still do the distance learning. I'm going back on a comment of these cohorts that are going to be formed once parents make that decision that their child is going to go back to campus. If the cohorts get too big, I'm afraid that I would love for my child to go back after I see what's happening in Chico Unified, and then my daughter not being able to go back on campus. That's a really big concern for me, that she may not be able to join a cohort after they have joined classes on campus. And then I really do like the AM PM type things that Chico Unified is doing, so that, you know, my daughter is an AM student in high school, and now I'm going to have to deal with 2 children on different schedules. I know that it's not ideal for everyone in any situation, but the whole point of me saying this is that I'm afraid that if I keep my one child home because I'm afraid for her to go back, that she will not be able to go back to her loved class because the cohort was capped off. That's my biggest concern with all of this. I would love to see her go back to school for sure.
Do we have a thought about that, about the cohorts and about them being capped off and the availability for families to be flexible in that. Chelsea, I don't know if you have a question or if you have an answer to that.
I have a solution or proposal or what I've seen. I know for us, we opted for the online version for one of our Chico Unified students, and that commitment was through the semester. So I think that that would be a realistic thing to put out to our families. If they aren't ready to come back or kind of want to see how things go first, then they could have the option to remain on distance learning through the semester. And same thing for families who just at this point want to stay on distance learning, they would have an option at the semester to reevaluate that decision. And then at that point, we would look at like an AM/PM model or whatever. And if it's necessary, I mean, I'm looking at the percentages on the survey responses, and it does seem to be close to half that are wanting the on-campus as of the survey. Obviously that could change, but yeah, that would be my thought, is that people commit to their online option through the semester if they desire that, and then we could reevaluate at the semester how we want to bring additional students on campus. I mean, at that point, who knows what color, tier, whatever we'll even be in. So that would be another discussion to have later.
And I agree with that too, going through the semester, because that's what we originally had talked about in this group is doing the distance learning until the semester end. That's where I'm kind of feeling with, is that when it comes to the end of the semester, will my daughter still have the option to come back to be in one of those cohorts?
Yeah, my thought, I mean, my opinion on that would be that, yes, you know, at the semester could be a turning point that we could, you know, reevaluate. Obviously, prior to the semester, we would resurvey or whatever. And then at that point, if we needed to split, you know, if we had an overwhelming change that required us to then split into sub cohorts, then the discussion would, you know, then we'd have to make the decision whether it be AM/PM or 2 days a week or how that would look. But I would support absolutely being able to change at the semester for those families. Monica, you're on mute.
Thank you. I think that this document is meant to be flexible enough so that those changes can be implemented later. Is that correct? It seems like that's like we left it a little bit vague to some degree, so that those changes can be modified as conditions change, as parents change their mind, as tiers change. Is that true? I see you're nodding your head, Susan. Okay. Ty, did you want to add to the conversation? Ty O'Neill.
I just wanted to, I mean, if I'm doing the math right, you're never going to have if you have more than 16 kids in a class above that, then you're going to split as close to 50-50 as possible. So you're going to start off with two cohorts with plenty of room in them, if you need to have two at all, right? So I mean, it seems what's that?
For the most part, that's true. The difficulty is, as we want to make sure we honor everyone's, I'm sitting at about 85% response. So over the next day, hopefully I'll cut it off and say, you know, we needed to hear from you by this time. And then we'll really be able to say to parents, this is what the cohort you're in looks like, and this is what your options are for changing. So I hear the concerns that are being expressed. We're really just needing to have the time to do the actual calculation.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I guess I would just encourage us to have faith in the process a little bit, and you know, we are sort of hashing through all the potential possibilities when we could have some really concrete conversations at the classroom level. But in order for that to happen, the board needs to give the potential for on-site to happen, right? And then the next step of how does it actually get implemented in each class, that conversation then gets active, I'm sure.
Heather.
Thank you. Is it possible for us to approve on-site learning for those students that want on-site without necessarily committing to what's specified in the proposal with the 2 days and the sub-cohorts? And another thing to anticipate too is that 50% of students doesn't necessarily equate to 50% of each class. So you might have like all of the 5th grade students that, you know, all of the students in that class want to come back on campus, and maybe only 25% of the 6th grade students want to, or, you know, depending, one teacher's class might have a very low number of students that want to come back on campus. So looking at that 50% number does not necessarily equate to 50% of each class. Those numbers could be different across grade levels, across teachers, that sort of thing. But my question was, my question was, can we approve moving forward with accommodating students on campus, taking into consideration that there were some concerns about specifically what was outlined in this particular proposal?
I certainly would accept that. My two major pieces is that we are approving a program that allows students that need to be on campus to be on campus, and that we are able to give families a date as to when that's going to start.
Okay.
So if you want to cut the other part out, that's fine. And we can go back and begin some more discussion now that we have those clearer numbers.
And Chelsea, you had your hand up a second ago, and then Brianna's next.
I put my hand back down. I'm going to hold my thought for a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. And Brianna?
I just wanted to thank you. I just wanted to briefly speak to, we have a bit of a conundrum with the, like, what came first, the chicken or the egg decision. And I think just for families to understand that I totally hear that decisions about coming back are going to be based on the schedule, but we're also needing to decide what schedule based on students coming back. And, you know, yes, Chico Unified's doing every day. They're also able to outsource and shuffle around faculty for a lot of their distance learning and have faculty support some of the components of the distance learning. We're going to be doing distance learning for ourselves. So yeah, yeah, the ideal would be the students on campus as much as possible. Just clarifying, there's a lot that comes into it, and it is really hard because the finite numbers of what will decide the schedule are based on the commitment from the parents. And so it is a little, like I said, I just wanted to kind of clarify, it is a little bit of a what came first, the chicken or the egg decision, because we're trying to decide the schedule based on numbers. But if the numbers are waiting for us to decide the schedule to decide, anyway, I don't have a solution to that per se, other than just clarifying that that is a factor in all of this.
And I think that's a point really well taken, because yeah, point well taken. So do I hear a motion about this item, about hybrid implementation date? Chelsea?
I just had a question for probably Susan, I guess. If we do opt to pass this with the removal of the schedule that's included in it, will a schedule come back to the board for approval, or will that entire process happen at the administrative level?
So what I would want, if you take this out, is for us to give me some language around the direction you want me to go for a schedule. So if you want to say students on campus to the extent possible, you know, something so that I can then just move forward with it because, yeah. So what I need from you is, yes, you want me to go forward with having students on campus. Yes, you know, as of this date and in support of the families who wish to be on campus or need to be on campus. I debated whether or not to put that schedule in. I did because of this discussion. I wanted to hear what was said about it. So, yeah, so
I'm hearing different pieces to this one motion. So maybe if we broke it down, that way we could tease it out a little bit. So do we want to start first with students back on campus, just that little part?
Or how about students back on campus November 9th?
Okay. So do I hear a motion about students back on campus on November 9th?
This is Chelsea. I will make a motion that we open the campus for students to return on November 9th for those that desire to.
Okay, well said. And nice and simple. I'm a first, is there a second? Chelsea's the first, Vicky's the second. Any further discussion? And I've got my eye on the chat box looking for hands. I hear no further discussion. I'm going to call for a vote. I'm going to start with, let me make my screen bigger. Laurel?
Laurel Hill Ward, aye.
Where's my, Laura?
Laura Swanson, nay.
Okay. Vicky?
Vicky Wanacott, aye.
Trisha?
Trisha Ateertua, aye.
Heather?
You're still on mute, Heather.
I know, I think she's looking, she looks like she can't get it to unmute or something. It's so frustrating, like you want to get in her computer. Still can't hear you. Do you want to type it in the chat?
There. Okay, I had to move the.
Okay,
symbol.
yeah,
It was
because I've got
it
everything
kept having
all,
a pop up.
yeah,
Yeah.
wonky.
Heather Bonilla, oh Lord, that's a hard decision. Heather Bonilla, aye.
Thank you. Chelsea, have I called on you yet?
Not yet, but
Chelsea Parker.
In support of Family's Choice, I also vote aye.
Thank you. And Monica McDaniel, will vote aye for November 9th in support of Family's Choices. Okay. Did I get everybody? I got all the board members? Okay. Thank you. So students on campus, and that was the date. Yes. So Susan, can you remind us the next part, the next tier?
So the next tier of discussion and decision-making is about the sub-cohorts that we have proposed and the expressed unhappiness or concern with the 2 days, half days not being enough time. So again, that suggestion did come out of the faculty work group or team, not necessarily the 2 days so far apart, but the 2 days a week at least on campus for half days. So what I would say is possibly you could say at minimum, that's what we would do. And then working with a balance between the two programs. And that is the difference between, as Brianna said, between what we're doing and what other schools are doing is we're committing to continuing distance learning within a small school environment, whereas, you know, Chico just says, okay, you're over there if you're doing distance learning, and it's a whole different set of teachers. We don't have that kind of staff, nor do we want to do it that way because of our commitment to the community and the classroom structure. So if you wanted to say that this is the minimum that you're okay with, and then we can work on whether we can add potentially 3 days a week and still do distance learning and have that discussion, because that information will be based on, okay, this class we have 9 kids that want to come back, and this one we have 15. You know, those sorts of discussions, and okay, this one has, we said 16, this one has 17, what are we going to do about that? So it's all that sort of kind of detail how questions that would be really hard, I think, for a board to give really specific information, and then for us to be able to move forward with the flexibility we need to meet this concern. We have heard now what parents are saying, what the board is saying, and your concerns about the schedule, and we can take it back and discuss it further. So that's what I would ask, is that you simply say at minimum, this is what we're going to do, and then we'll work on knowing that this is the desire of the community and our need to meet the needs of the community, that we will adjust to what we can do.
Susan, I have, I'm going to read some comments in the chat, but I also have a question about instructional minutes. Is the district demanding that we have a certain amount of instructional minutes? Do we need to consider any of those sort of parameters?
Instructional minutes in the current situation, the maximum that we deal with is basically 4 hours for 8th graders, and it's, I think, 3 hours for kindergarten, and somewhere in between for 1st through 3rd. Those instructional minutes are defined very differently in the current model than what is defined traditionally. So traditionally, it's actually how many minutes they're on campus. Now there is a structure that says how much are they assigned for work. So it's much more flexible than our usual process. So having them on campus, for example, as McManus is doing 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, that would assume that they're doing another at least 2 hours of work at home. And so that's how they complete those minutes. That's a lot of detail stuff. I hope I explained it well.
So does anybody on the council have an idea of how to structure this? Heather's got her hand up. You're on mute, dear. It's okay. There you go.
Sorry, I'll figure it out one day.
That's all right. Once you do, we won't need it anymore.
Oh, right. I had a question for Brianna. With your kind of hand on the pulse of the faculty, do you feel like, I mean, I wish we had maybe some empirical data from like the faculty as a whole, but we don't have that. With your hand on the pulse of the faculty, do you feel like starting at 2 days a week, as far as like approval from the board, is something that is more feasible to be implemented with our current staff and faculty, versus accommodating versus committing to more days per week for the students coming on campus?
Yeah, Heather, thanks for asking that. You know, we discussed this a lot in the teacher committees that met with Susan. And, you know, I don't want to speak on behalf of faculty because I really haven't had a chance to talk to everybody, but we did go kind of back and forth about like, what model would be reasonable for faculty and staff and prep and managing distance learning and things like that. You know, what schedule would be feasible for families to remember and keep track of, what schedules could be feasible for childcare. We are still kind of waiting to hear from CARD on their ability to support some of this. You know, the really tricky thing, I mean, I think short answer, yes, a 2-day schedule, at least for starting, feels more doable for managing all of it, especially for classes that are going to need to have 2 sub cohorts. That's where the number game becomes really critical, because, you know, like I have a class of 20. I only have 4 students who need to choose to stay home to be in a single cohort situation. That's fairly easy to figure. That's probably going to happen. I have 1 cohort. We could do 4 days a week. We have 4 or 5 classes that numbers are more in the mid to high 20s. So then we're looking at a pretty high likelihood for a 2 cohort situation. And then that becomes the real challenge to figure out what model to serve the dual cohorts. And I just think, personally for me, fairly strongly, I feel like the AM/PM schedule is not feasible for the staff that we have. We don't have deep pockets of staff to draw on to support, you know, having back-to-back cohorts. That completely takes out almost all the teachers' time during the day to post things on Google Classroom, to get things ready for Google Classroom, to record things, to meet with students in remote instruction. You know, it's again, it's kind of the numbers game, where I feel like the higher numbers, you know, having more like close, you know, 45% of families opting to stay home means that's a large potential chunk in each class to be engaging in all remote instruction. So like that's going to be a big time commitment. Like remote instruction is a big time commitment. And so, you know, it's really hard. The mother in me and the teacher in me simply wants to say, get kids on campus as much as we can, but there's a lot of logistics around staff. And this has been such an intense load for anyone in education. And I just want to be really mindful so that we're not tossing our teachers and our school into something we can't do sustainably, even though the priority is really high to be getting, you know, I have, like I articulated in the last meeting, I have students in varying degrees of crisis. But I also think, you know, we've put intention into doing this well, and I don't want us to rush into something we can't sustain. I've watched Chico Unified's fly through their transition, but they have a district of staff to make that happen. And even so, it's been a mad scramble from what I'm hearing from teachers about their experience with it. Like plans changing like Friday after having been sent to students and families. So yeah, I hope that answered your question to some degree. I mean, I think faculty is conflicted in a lot of ways, that, you know, people are worried, there's questions, none of this is easy, everything's complicated. Yeah.
Thank you, Brianna. I think that's a really important perspective. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and Heather, thanks for asking, because Brianna's insights about this, especially how we're different from Chico Unified and all the resources that they have that we simply don't have, it's really insightful, because we feel like we can do it all, and our teachers are so high functioning that we feel like they're kind of magical. So like, you're magical, you're going to magically figure these things out. But it's really realistic to realize that there are limitations to that too. Chelsea, you have your hand up.
Yeah, okay, just making sure I unmuted. One other thing that I wanted to bring up too, and just something to think about, and I guess also a question for the teachers that are here. You know, the proposal, the 8:15-ish to 12:15-ish, because I'm not putting words on, you know, making that fact, but you know, I think it was McManus that was referred to being 2 hours a day, and I think Chico Unified is doing only 2 hours a day for their elementary. So, and also students that did not opt to go to Oak Ridge, that opted to stay at their district schools, are being offered distance learning from their classroom teacher who is concurrently teaching a class through the semester. At the semester, then they have to, from what's been put out to us so far, decide to either go to Oak Ridge or come back to school. But one of the, what I'm, I guess, trying to get out there really is, what about less hours on campus so that we could serve students more days a week? Maybe only doing main lesson on campus, and having them 2 hours. And then, yes, some kids, I mean, I understand that ideally the younger grades would have their main lesson first thing in the morning and the upper grades would have it in the afternoon. And some of that would not fall into line so beautifully, but in doing less hours, but being able to have more days on campus, and then utilizing for the classes that would have to split into 2 sub cohorts, putting extra supports from our aides and things like that more in those classes versus obviously a teacher who only has to teach 1 cohort wouldn't have a need for an aide as much as a teacher who's teaching 2 cohorts, and kind of utilizing the resources that we have for the classes that need it most. Monica, you really look like you're on a roll, but you are on mute.
Oh, I said Susan and then Heather. Sorry.
So I really appreciate the input and discussion that's going on, but I also know that a lot of the work and discussion that we're having really needs to be done by faculty and staff, and Rachel and I, as far as specific needs of specific students, sizes of classes, and all that. And you're not going to have that information to make those solutions. So that's why I'm asking, and whether you want to broaden this in a different way, I'm just asking for a broad suggestion of how we can do it. So then we can sit down and go, hey, maybe 3 hours, 4 days a week works better than 4 hours, 3 days a week. Those sorts of discussions that we need to have, or, where is it for specific classes that we need to have 2 cohorts, and exactly what does that mean? Those are discussions that that I have enough. I feel like I have enough information from parents, even if parents change their plans, unless they totally, 25% of all families decide not to, or decide suddenly that they want to do distance learning when they're not. I think overall we have the numbers that have a way for us to move forward, but we're down in those weeds right now. When I talk to faculty, I talked about, and Heather will relate to this, planning the lunch, who's going to get lunch when, and you think you have the perfect plan, and then you say, okay, that's, kids aren't able to eat, we need to fix it, and we go back and change it. And those are the kind of decisions that we're in the process of needing to make. So really the board, give me an overall idea of what you want and let us use the experts that we have, the expertise that we have, to make those specific decisions, knowing what Dr. Valcaringi said, knowing what you're talking about here, what the concerns and options are, and take it back to the staff for a final decision. So.
Thank you. Heather, and then Chelsea.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that my main concern is this is a big shifting into in-person learning with teachers and students, and my main concern is, I'm not to minimize the concern for parents and students needing to be on campus, because that is that's why we're having this discussion. But also I don't want to overburden our teachers and make that then be not only challenging for them, but also creating a situation that's not ideal, you know, learning environment, because it's just too much taken on too quickly. With 2 weeks notice, I do wonder if committing to, you know, 4 or 5 days a week, like has been mentioned, with the very limited resources we have, might be too much. So after hearing further discussion, I do appreciate, Susan, that you put that in your proposal, taking into account the input that you received from teachers, that maybe starting out with just offering a small amount of time on campus gives us the opportunity to have a transition towards being able to offer more on-campus time to our students if we find that, hey, we're able to do this, we're doing a good job, yes, we can take on more, yes, we can add more. Ultimately, I think everybody's goal is that we're all back in school like we normally would be. But we have to take into account the situation that we're in, and the situation our staff and our faculty are in, and our teachers and our families, and the resources we have, and it's not easy.
Chelsea, did you want to add something? Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I would just like to be considered as you're looking at the model, if it is going to only be 2 days a week, I would ask that you look at a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday instead of a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, because childcare providers typically offer services on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a Tuesday, Thursday basis. So to get care for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, you would have to pay for an entire week. And I believe CARD would likely be willing to work with whatever schedule we implement, but anybody with a desire for their child to be in any program other than CARD would not necessarily have that option. And as somebody who had kids in childcare for many years, it's typically your Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, or every day. So I would ask that be considered as we're considering our families. If we're not going to offer a full week, that we at least offer something conducive to outside support for students as well.
Thank you for that insight. That's huge. So do I hear a motion about the amount of time that we are requesting, and about this document that is the opening date for on-site hybrid proposal? I would suggest a minimum time, and then you know, we're in the motion, and then we go from there. And Susan, you wanted to add something?
As you're preparing to write the motion, and thank you very much, I had one more point that I would like your approval on, which is the maximum size of the cohort, so that is clearly stated. And that was 16 in the proposal.
How did you come up with 16?
The size of the classrooms, with
Okay.
the size of the classrooms and the earlier expectation of 14 being a small group, wanting to be slightly larger than that. That's
okay. The only reason I asked that, because that was a thing, that was a big discussion last time because of how they did it somewhere else, kind of thing. And
yeah.
So yeah, okay. So do I hear a motion about the time that students will spend on campus as per this document, and the cohort size?
This is Chelsea. I will make a motion that we accept the opening date for on-site hybrid option, with the change that instead of sub-cohorts will follow an A-B schedule, A being Monday and Thursday, B being Tuesday and Friday, that we instead put that students will be offered a minimum of 2 days on campus per week.
Thank you. And do we want to do the size of cohort as a separate motion?
I didn't, because it is in that document, and
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because it does state that. I mean, Susan, if you'd wish for us to do it as a separate, I'm open to that, but my motion to accept this full page document with that modification would have also included that.
Thank you. Thank you for noticing that. I have a first. Is there a second?
This is Trisha. I'll second it.
Thank you, Trisha. Before we vote, is there any further discussion about this topic? Chelsea's got her hand up.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I would really like to see us as we start up and as we offer 2 days a week, really looking at trying to expand that out, especially because I know that there are students and families who really need more than 2 days a week for their well-being.
Thank you. Heather, you got your hand up? Oh, it was up in the participant.
I forgot to lower it. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Any further discussion before we vote? Any comments from the public? Okay, I'm going to have a roll call vote. Hearing none. I'm going to go backwards this time. Well, Vicki.
Vicki Wanacott, aye.
Thank you. Laurel.
Laurel Hill Ward, aye.
Thank you. Laura.
Laura Swanson, abstain.
Thank you. Trisha.
Trisha out there too, aye.
Thank you. Chelsea.
Chelsea Parker, aye.
Thank you. Heather.
Heather Bonilla, aye.
Thank you. And Monica McDaniel, aye. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for all this hard work. I like this better than what I'm seeing from other schools. It just feels more inclusive because other schools are being told what to do. So that's great. At least that's my perception. So thank you. Moving on to board training. Are we done with all of this, Susan, before I move on to item 3.4?
We are done with all of this, and I think we should just take a big, deep breath.
Okay.
Thank you for a minute. Ooh.
Yeah, it's scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's scary. It's scary to make choices for your own family, and it's scary to have the responsibility to make choices for other people's families and other people's livelihoods and other people's conditions.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. So all the information on the Brown Act training we have, or the training we annually are expected to do training for Brown Act and also suggested for governance. And that was from our Once Upon a Time FICMAT report. So considering the current situation and checking around, I signed us up for it's Charter Schools Development Corporation, and that's Eric Premack's organization, for those of you who know about the politics of charters. And he has both an online Brown Act training and an online governance academy. So I've asked Alex to set each of you up as board members to go through that online training, and then asking Monica that next month we put it on the agenda to just have a discussion of it as a group, what we've learned, and go from there. So Alex is going to set you up accounts on that. That is also something that is available to parents who might be interested in it, or other staff members as well. So if you're interested in either of those trainings, go ahead and give Alex an email, and she can set up an account for you.
Thank you, Susan. And that's just to get people up to speed about the Brown Act and about the general rules of governance, so that we can all be on the same page and everything. And it's great that you can offer that to parents too, because it's important that lots of people have their eyes on it, because it's just a thing that we have to consider. So thank you for that.
And it helps us understand how meetings run and
Right.
what everybody's rules are and things like that. So,
Right.
so that was it. Brief one.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments about that before I move on to faculty?
I was reading the chat and I missed, is there a date for that? And I'm so sorry if I just totally missed that.
And Alex has got her hand up, so I think she's going to answer that question. Alex?
Not about the date, but I just wanted to ask if any of the board members already received the invitation, because I did already send that out. But if not, I can resend the invitation.
I haven't seen it. Go ahead, sorry.
Seen it? Okay.
Well, I was just going to say, I got a thing from chartercenter.org that says, thank you for creating an account on our website. Please click the link below to confirm it. But I haven't seen an invitation for an actual event.
I also got that email, and when I clicked to confirm it, it said I had to enter a code, an access code or something, but then I didn't have it. It seemed like I needed more information.
Okay, then there's more for me to do. I just wanted to ask if I didn't know what happened on your end of things. So
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
got the email, Alex, but I deleted it along with a lot of political junk mail. So sorry.
So it's not actually an event, Chelsea. It is an online training, so it gives you the flexibility to do it on your own schedule.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. So faculty report.
Hi, this is Riley. Brianna, did you want to jump in or shall I share my slides?
Go forth, Riley.
Okay. If I haven't met you, I am one of the 4th grade teachers, and I'm wondering, may I have permission to share my screen for our faculty slides?
He's also one of our faculty co-chairs this year, doing an excellent job.
Thank you. Yep, details. Okay. Wonderful. Here I go. So we asked for our faculty members to contribute to our slide deck. So in kindergarten, they're working on blanket stitching masks for Halloween, learning shapes with items from nature, hearing a story about a clever little girl who outwits a big bear. And here is one of the tables. I believe this is from Teacher Cheryl's classroom. And Teacher Susan sent me some pictures. In her kindergarten, they're doing songs and stories of dragons, pumpkin children, Bremen Town musicians, great story if you haven't already read that, and goblins. Our project includes leaf rubbings, parachutes, dragon bread, pumpkin pizzas, and rainbow paintings. Here's some of those cute little activities. I especially love that little beeswax person from his parachute. Oh, this is an exciting one. So some of the teachers are creating little digital classrooms. So you can actually click, I am working on clicking it. Click to see Mrs. McDonald's classroom. And if you click on her stories, it will actually take you to her reading the story. Oh, I don't think I clicked the share sound button. But if you had clicked it, you would hear a lovely story read by Mrs. McDonald. And she is changing her books and bringing books from all over, and wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Back. Oh, nope, not that one. Present. Thank you. Technology. Okay. Here we go in 2nd grade. These past few weeks, we have learned about multiplication and grouping with Fox Boy as he continued his magical mathematical journey into the Wise Woods. Here's a picture of one of Fox Boy's adventures in the Wise Woods. We counted how many deer legs we could see through the trees and how many bat eyes we saw peeking over the log. And there are some cute little animal faces right there. 3rd grade, in this block, we've learned how early humans experienced the passing of time and seasons, how we came to measure everything, the daily and yearly cycle, and how to tell time, etc. So we have some moon phases over here, some beautiful drawings from 3rd grade. 4th grade, here we go. We have started our Viking studies. We are working on a Viking shield project at home. And I think last you heard we were in our animal block, our zoology block. And so we finished up those reports. Oh, we have a tongue twister. Where'd it go? We are also working on a Norwegian tongue twister. So if you want to challenge yourself, fem flat flinder pa ett flat fat means 5 fat fishes on a fat plate. Go ahead and try and say that 5 times fast. It's pretty entertaining to see 4th grade students say that. Our 4th grade Viking Shield project includes a code that students must crack using math to decode what colors they will be using on their individual shield. And we've also been writing in runes and sending secret codes to each other and our classmates with runes. Really exciting stuff. 5th grade, they are working in a geography block and has a special focus on national parks, really embracing how some people across the country are taking virtual learning everywhere they go. So they are moving east to west, studying geology, botany, zoology, Native Americans by region. At the end of the block, there's a project on planning a road trip with detailed information about everything they can do and see by state. I really hope to get a copy of those road trips for my future plans. And there is included some of the areas that they've been studying already. 6th grade in Rome, Roman studies with technology, pretty amazing. I believe this was put in by Mr. Combs, our math specialist, with CPM math in 6th grade, just an example of what's going on here. Handwork, oh, this is my time to share a special video. 6th grade, where did it go? Oh yes, they've been working with clay, making seed bombs. 7th graders carving soap, how creative. 8th graders rudimentary sewing kit. And I have permission to share a special video of a student right here. Oh, is that sound working? Can I get a thumb from someone? No. Okay, wait. There's ways to fix this. Pressing a new button, sharing again. Okay.
Hi, it's Maggie from the 6th grade, and this is what I have been doing in handwork. So we have been working with clay, as you can see here, making a bunch of different pots. We've made 2, a coil and a pinch pot, and this is my pinch pot. So yeah, that's what we've been doing for handwork. Bye.
Love it. And in technology.
Hi, I'm Lily.
Hold on.
No, we can't hear you, Riley. We can't hear you, Riley. Riley, we lost you, your sound. There you go. Still no. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Like something happened with the video.
Maybe try closing your video player, Riley.
Or you may need to go back. There's a little speaker button. Your audio could be attaching to the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
The little arrow next to your microphone where you choose like the select a microphone, make sure that it's on your microphone and not on your video player.
Oh yeah. Because it happened when you turned the last video off. So something happened then. While Riley's figuring that out, Alex, please remember to bring the Brown Act stuff back for the next agenda, as I forgot to ask that. Thanks.
I don't know if Riley still has more slideshow to go. Okay, she says no.
We want more kid videos. Sorry, go ahead.
It's fine. I was working on sharing and didn't leave myself enough time. I did a neat poetry project with the 8th graders. It's called an I Am From poem. They squawked very hard the entire process of it, but then came up with really beautiful poems. But I needed to compile them, so I will work on that for another time. Yeah, kind of, I mean, our faculty's just been working it hard at keeping it as good as it can be through all of this and as rich as possible. And, you know, there's a lot of places where there's some really fun and surprising things coming from it and new ways to get to share and meet with the students. But yeah, thanks Riley for compiling an awesome slideshow.
Thank you, Riley. And Laurel said that in the chat, she said, if we were in person, I would want to give Riley a standing ovation. But I would want to give all the teachers a standing ovation for continuing doing Waldorf rich education, even distance learning. That said, I wanted to make a comment. Wasn't Waldorf around during the last pandemic in the early 1900s? What'd they do? I mean,
I think he was technically right at the end of the last pandemic, but I can do some research for you, Monica.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to bring up a rhetorical question when we were having serious conversation about the school starting, but I am wondering, you know?
I do know that there were Steiner schools they were outlawed in Nazi Germany, the Waldorf schools. So there was ones that were like kept in secret in the basement because they were actually considered an illegal education at that time. And that Steiner thought his education, he created his education at the end of World War I because he saw it as an answer to the crisis in humanity and as a curative education for the greater world at large.
Love it. Give you goosebumps. Sorry, it's just awesome. Like I want that tattooed on my email or something. Thank you. Thank you, Riley. Okay, any other things that Chico Unified School District report? I see that is under administration. First, we need an executive director's report. So thank you, Riley. We're moving on to Susan. Okay, Susan, you're muted. I can see you talking.
I just don't think it's fair that I have to follow that. I mean, you know.
It's a tough act to follow. Viking ships, kids, Maggie.
So I will do my best. The working on the distance learning and continuing to work with teachers on how to improve that and how to address all that goes with it, along with trying to look at an on-site program has been pretty much my job recently. But I have some other points I want to share. First, the grant that Chelsea talked about earlier is an anti-hate grant that's being offered by CDE. They're working with some partners to fund that. And so we applied for that. It goes primarily to professional development for the staff around thinking in terms of anti-racism and bias and that sort of thing. So we're looking forward. We're already doing work on that subject. The faculty and a number of staff have committed to reading the current book on Common, which is How to Be an Anti-Racist. And so we've purchased those books last week and hope to get that work started through the faculty meetings. And then we also have a small group of parents and staff working on Me and White Supremacy and working through that workbook. So moving forward with just addressing how we need to deal with those sorts of racism and identity issues. I'll jump then with that to the Acorn. Alex has taken that over and getting a nice consistent run on it. I want to point out that this week she posted from the task force that's working on social justice and equity, information on courage and particularly on Halloween, and to be thoughtful about Halloween costumes, that they are not mocking a culture of any type. It used to be pretty common. Certain costumes would be from Japan or Mexico or something like that. And they're just saying, hey, don't do that. We can find other things to enjoy on Halloween. And I will say, in my experience with the Halloween parades, we're more likely to have dragons and fairies and witches. So, you know, we already honor that to a great extent, but just that reminder that that's what we need to do. Through Chelsea, she suggested we contact North Valley Foundation and put in for some fundraising they're doing. And so Maggie has been working on a letter for that. And so we're moving forward with some fundraising. And again, week before last, we put in the acorn that we have been able to set up the website so people can donate directly through the website now if they'd like to, both through the classes and to the general fund or to the parent council. We are receiving money, about $10,000 from BCOE specifically for counseling. That again is from the North Valley Foundation and goes through BCOE to the schools. In past years, we've been given a counselor. This year, they just offered if we'd like to have the money brought to us so our counselor could do the work, and we are doing that. And the last good news is last week we received and got set up 40 laptops. So those laptops will be issued primarily starting with 8th graders and going down then to 7th grade for whatever we need. The focus of purchasing the laptops for students, not only because we need them in the current situation, but to help the 7th and 8th graders be more ready for high school, being able to use a broader base of programs than the Chromebooks allow. So we're there. We're also hopefully have a line on some more Chromebooks, but I can't give you a date on that one yet. So those are just some of the things we're doing to move all of the other issues forward as well. That's it.
Thank you. And I see now why you wanted to save that. That's pretty remarkable. Chelsea also added into the chat that a good book about anti-racism is So You Want to Talk About Race. So that's a good book. Also, we have a question about where Charter Council meetings are posted.
So we're still sort of in the old world right now with meeting minutes being posted and good notes as through this. We're working on setting up the YouTube channel so that we can do that. But we do have the recordings that we take. So if you would like a copy of the recording, you can ask Alex, and we will either try and figure out how to get it to you, or we will get it posted on our YouTube channel. But we're not quite there yet. So.
Thanks, Susan. Thank you. Okay. And so that is about wrapping our meeting up. Chico Unified School District report. Do we need to do that one with you also, Susan?
Excuse me? I was reading.
Under administration, CUSD report.
That's the item that I pulled off earlier.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I'm sorry. That's right. I even have it lined through and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wraps up the meeting. Thank you so much for everybody who joined tonight and for your participation and ongoing support for the Charter Council. Next meeting will be Tuesday, November 17th, 2020, a few days after school opens. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good evening.